what allowed me to get such an amazing woman isn't going to allow me to keep such an amazing woman. So what do I need to do to be a husband that's worthy of this fantastic lady? And if it means learning how to make eggs or having the patience to go through a HelloFresh recipe, then so be it. If it means having to learn how to pre-regulate more so I can be there for my children, then so be it. That's what needs to happen. And just because I'm autistic and those traits aren't factory installed doesn't mean I can't find the resources, whether it's books, coaching, whatever, to learn how to be that type of individual. And it's not necessarily changing, it's just becoming the version of you that you need to become to be the best father, the best husband, the best person.
Welcome back to Mother's Guide Through Autism podcast. I'm Bridget Shipman and I'm your host. And today I am speaking to Jeremy and Charity, known as Team Rochford. They are an NDNT couple who have been happily married for over 20 years. They have two neurodivergent children, both of which are on the autism spectrum, and most likely they inherited those genes from Jeremy, who himself received an autism ADHD diagnosis later in life. Both are trauma-informed TI, certified life coaches, CLC, who specialize in helping neurodivergent and neurodiverse families understand communication, culture, and their own unique family dynamic. Together, as a neurodiverse couple and family, they have founded Neurofam, www.ourneurofam.com, to support other ND/NT families through the intricacies of navigating life in a world that far too often doesn't understand their struggles. Jeremy, with his BA in communication from California University of Pennsylvania, and Charity with her BA in psychology, California University of PA, live in a small town outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with their two awesomely neurodivergent children, an overused coffee maker, and multiple emotional support animals. Enjoy this episode. And I'm so excited you heard before you joined this interview the wonderful work that my guests are going to share with us today. So I want to welcome you both to Mother's Guide Through Autism.
Well,
Thank you.
thanks for having us.
Yeah, so let's just start by I know our viewers, our listeners heard your bio, but you just want to introduce yourself a little bit and just tell us about how we got here, right? Why are we here?
What do you do? Well, I'm Jeremy, and this is my lovely wife, Charity.
Yeah, it's me.
So together we run Neurofam, which is a coaching practice to help neurodiverse families. And we came that way via our children. Both kids are autistic and have some ADHD traits. Jonathan is diagnosed ADHD. Going through that, we learned I'm on the spectrum as well. And so we've got 3 out of 4
Yep.
where we got one, and it's super cute because every April our son goes up to his mother and go, I'm sorry, we just can't celebrate you today, but you're autistic to me.
I love that so much. Yeah. Yeah. So this is, and I was excited to interview you both because your situation is rather unique. And so I think we can share, because this podcast is all about knowledge, hope, and inspiration. So I feel like your story has everything in it. And so I think it's important for you to share it. So thanks for doing that, first of all. And then, as I talk to and coach other parents, I think it's interesting how a lot of people don't really understand the term neuro or neurodivergent. So, can you describe your neurotype family? What does that mean? If no one's ever heard that, what does it mean?
Do you wanna roll with that?
Yeah, well, in our case, it's all about just the nerd differences. So what are the differences in how each one of our family members' brains are set up? And so well, to go in the order of how we found out, and let's see, and kind of have become more knowledgeable in all of this. Our son was the first to get diagnosed. He was identified in his daycare setting, so an early intervention, which was great. And so they sent us for, testing and diagnosis. And our son is level 2 autism
AS2,
plus ADHD.
collecting all the initials.
Yes. After that, we became more educated just about autism specifically. So, I had been a psychology major in college, but of course that was before the more recent changes to the DSM. So as we learned more, we got Tony Atwood's book, and that
OG. Tony Allen's amazing.
that really helped us. As we went through, it was like, oh, okay, wow. A, a lot of these traits, a lot of these things that we're reading, boy, these sound like our daughter. These sound like Jeremy. And so we next had her diagnosed, and Jeremy had self-identified. And it wasn't until, we wanted to go into coaching that he went for official diagnosis as well. But yeah, so our what is it? Neurospicy.
Neurospicy. I like that.
We definitely have some differences. I have not been officially diagnosed with anything. I was told, by a doctor in the early 2000s that, I have a little sensory stuff. So I'm, otherwise completely neurotypical, but I feel that my sensory stuff is what allows me to better relate with
Mm.
kids and with Jeremy as far as, as far as the sensory differences, especially. I may not have the same sensory stuff, but it makes it easier for me to understand and relate with them.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think it is so unique, but I think as we learn more about what it means to be neurodivergent, right? What that umbrella entails, like you said, your son was collecting all the initials. Is that what you said?
Yep.
Jeremy, I would like to know, okay, so I meet some people that question whether they may or may not be on the autism spectrum. So, how did you go about getting your diagnosis? Like, what would you do? Like, if someone's listening that goes, I kind of think either my partner is or I am as an adult, what do you do?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I feel like there's a few things to walk back as a slingshot to really answer that question. Hopefully
Okay.
as appropriately as possible. We we like to put cute terms, so we just call those individuals neurocurious or neuroquestioning,
Okay.
where you sort of in your own mind and in your own family, it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, and you're like, wait a minute. I'm seeing a lot of these behaviors in my son or my daughter, or even in the DSM if you're just trying to understand yourself better. And you're like, if I were to be on the spectrum, a lot of these behaviors would make sense. They would explain a lot of challenges and circumstances that I found myself in. So I think the first thing in terms of taking a step towards a diagnosis is being open to the possibility, is
Mm,
allowing yourself and your mental health to be more important than society's stigma.
mhm.
Because far too often we want to paint what the spectrum looks like to other people rather what it could mean to us. So I think the first step is to be open to what is the possibility of being on the spectrum. The second would be, at least from my standpoint, is education. We joked about Tony Atwood being the OG, but really he made so many things not only make sense, but tear down emotional walls to be open to them. Dr.
Mhm.
Atwood has this way of explaining things and presenting things that really allow people who had no inkling or idea to really be open to it. So
Mm-hmm.
step one is to be open. Step two is to find some resources that paint a picture of hope and optimism, sort of like you said, as the podcast is doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then step three is to follow through. And I won't speak for all men, but there are some men who are challenged with follow through. We really love planning. We really love, right? But for me, I ended up finding a professional that I trusted, that I knew would be honest with me, but I also felt that I could be honest with them.
Yeah.
I didn't go in with any bias. I didn't try to make myself seem more autistic, and I didn't also try to make myself less autistic. I just said, okay, let's answer the questions in front of me and let's see where it falls. And so after the test, certified on the spectrum, her diagnosis was AS1 and with some traits of ADHD, a lot more traits than not. So we're gonna get that test here shortly, so I can collect my letters as well. Right now, my son's beating me, and he can't outshine me with the letters. I gotta get in on that. But so what I'd say though, for people who wanted to go from neuro curious or neuro questioning to actually getting something done, follow those three steps. One, be open to what the possibilities are because it's not all doom and gloom. Two, self-educate to see whether it's the DSM, there's great resources to see where this is the criteria.
Mm-hmm.
How much of this am I actually applicable to?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then three, find someone that you're going to trust, that you trust will be honest with you, and go in there completely unbiased, because I have coached people and I have worked with people who their spouse will read up on what the DSM is and then just present the complete opposite. And that doesn't help anyone. So it's very important that we're open, that we work with people that will hold us accountable, but that we're also self-accountable. So those are the three things I would say for those who are
Mhm.
looking to get a diagnosis to go through.
Yep. And
Yeah.
for us with your evaluation, it's it's important to have someone else who knows you well
Good point. Good
that's
point.
part of that evaluation with you.
Mm.
So I know that with the children and their
Yeah.
diagnoses, that's something, obviously with a child. They don't remember when they were a baby, they don't remember when they were a toddler. So it just makes sense. Okay, you're gonna have a parent with them. But even with diagnosing an adult, having someone that's really close to you, if it's a spouse or if have a sibling or a parent that would be available to go with you, someone that's seen you living life when you don't have the mask on.
Mm,
I think that's a really key part of getting a true look for an evaluation and a possible diagnosis.
really great point.
Yeah, that's great advice because I think, it's the self-awareness stuff, right? You don't realize that something's different because that's who you've always been. Why? Why? So, yeah, that's really, really great advice. And so for those that are listening, it's I think personally, it's important to know those things about ourselves because the more self-awareness and self-discovery work you can do, the things just start to make sense. I think it creates clarity for us and kind of clears our path a little bit, you know. So you two, I love this, have been together for over 20 years. That is
Yeah.
beautiful and wonderful. I want to congratulate you both on that.
Thank you.
So, what do you think the major differences between mixed neurotype couples and the same neurotype couples, if any? I mean, what's your advice? What's your insight?
There definitely are differences. I look at it like the neurodivergent are like a Mac and the neurotypical are like a PC. And if whether it's empathy or really any of the executive functions, like if the NT is running a Mac and they expect it to have Microsoft Office factory installed, there's going to be conflict. You're going to get frustrated at the Mac. You're like, this is the stupidest computer ever. Why can't I do my word processing? But you need to take a step back and go, no, it can run Microsoft Office. You can have PowerPoint on a MacBook Pro, but there's a few steps you need to take to get there. And I
Mhm.
feel it's the same way as a neurodivergent. Like I understand empathy now. I didn't always understand empathy, but I've learned to understand it because my mind didn't start that way. But
Mhm.
once I was able to build kind of like bridges and really see things from someone else's perspective and relate that to things that I felt deeply about, all of a sudden I was able to operate in a place of empathy.
Mhm.
Thing with regulation, when I didn't realize that no one else thought these people were loud. And it was driving me crazy. And it was driving me crazy that they didn't understand how crazy they were driving me. But once I understood, like, nope, nope, that's me having sensory issues and I'm getting dysregulated because of it, I can go, oh, okay, so the rest of the world thinks this volume's normal. Don't know why, but bless their hearts. And so I was able to operate in a system of, well, how can I be a part of that world and enjoy it while not put myself in a place of frustration and angst?
Mm.
So I think understanding that both parties are different is a great place to be. Because if you are a neurotypical and you put neurotypical expectations on your spouse without having conversations about it,
Mhm.
well, expectations aren't met and turmoil pursues or ensues, probably both actually. If you're a neurodivergent and you expect your neurotypical spouse to think the way you do, likewise, those expectations won't be met. So I think understanding there's a difference is super important. B, celebrating that difference is extremely important. But then also C, you are a couple, which means it is your job to set expectations for the two of you.
Mm.
So having the conversation of, even though you may suffer from time blindness, you still have to pick the kids up on time. Or even though you have this special interest, we can't stop at every Target to see if they have a new car. And the neurodiverse also has to understand that part of being in a situation means meeting the expectations of those situations. So I'm not a great cook. I would say I'm more of an assembler, but I've learned how to do eggs well. And so the kids know, and we've conditioned the kids that whenever mom's away, it's egg night. But we have crazy egg nights. Like if it's Taco Tuesday, well then we're gonna throw the eggs on some burrito shells. If it's not a Tuesday, maybe we'll just have like it. But it's
Eggs and toast.
eggs and toast. But it's as the neurodiverse, not looking at what I can't do, but asking the question, what does it take to get me to be able to do that? Now, I will never learn how to be a master cook, but I can overcome the black and white thinking and go, well, it doesn't mean we're eating cereal. What can I do? And I think, and I'll definitely let you speak for yourself, but like feeling supported while I was trying to figure out what I was competent and capable of was also massively helpful.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, I think from the neurotypical side, I think having a lot of empathy, not just, it's been a lot, it has been a lot easier since we found out that the reasons,
You're
right?
you're understating the word lot. Like it's
Yes.
been massively better since we
Um,
understood the role neurodivergencies play.
yes. But I think we've always, like, even if you go back to when we were dating 24 years ago,
I'm not great yet, but we're getting there.
we're getting there. Even then, I had changed the way that I communicated with him versus how I communicated with everyone else.
Mhm.
And
Sorry, but thank you.
thinking back to, at the very beginning, because he had difficulty with where do I act in what way, right? So when we started dating, um, he was a college hockey guy, right? And so there would be times where it was just like, well, I'm college hockey humor guy. And when it was just me and him, like, you don't have to be like Mr. Sarcastic, you know, loud sports humor guy. You can just, leave that for the hockey games and just be, not sarcastic with me. But, I learned very, very early on that, just being very clear with things. Like I couldn't just, oh, I'm just gonna act like I don't like this and hope that he gets the idea. You know, have to change your communication pattern, and to the point where it's like, okay, let me just tell you the truth of it. Let me tell you this in black and white, instead of, acting a certain way and hoping he gets the idea. And we've communicated like that since we were dating. And I think that's a major reason why we've been able to work so well, even before
Yeah.
really getting a diagnosis and figuring things out. I think one other piece is, because I was a psychology major, I do have an interest in differences. And I've I've always been curious and wanting to find out the whys of things. Um, so, I think it's very easy to see with our kids, right? Because with young children, most of what goes into their life experience, you see going in. So when your child is repeating one thing over and over and over and over again, and everybody's like, why is he saying that? Oh, because it's his favorite TV show right now, and that's their tagline that they say at, the end of every episode. So that's just, it gives him a good feeling, so that's why he's repeating it. In the same way, even as a couple, if Jeremy's acting a little bit differently, or he's kind of, giving off that I'm uncomfortable with something or I'm weird with something, you know, I can trigger the, I wonder why, and start helping to look at things and play more of the, helper in wanting to identify and make things better, instead of, had we not had that outlook, I might immediately go like, why are you being weird? Did I do something weird? Are you mad at me?
Well,
So that's a daily thing.
no, and to that point, and that's why I'm a huge advocate. I'm a huge advocate of the diagnosis because once we got the diagnosis for myself, it allowed me to be much better in those conversations. And so if I am having a bad day, I can learn, I've learned to just go to her and be like, hey, this isn't you. Everything here is amazing, but this over there really sucks. And I'm gonna be dysregulated for a couple hours so that she doesn't have to waste her mental equity trying to figure it out, even though she's brilliant at it and loves to. I've been able to be more preemptive with sharing my feelings, whereas prior to a diagnosis, not really so much. And so she did, like she had to guess more. But what the diagnosis really did for me was it helped explain a lot of my behaviors. It didn't excuse them. So like the sarcasm, things like that, there definitely are executive function challenges that you don't know until you know. But once you know them and you start practicing mindfulness around that, you find yourself being aware more and more, which then, if it is a behavior that needs to be corrected, then you can. Or, like sarcasm, it's a behavior that needs to be put in its proper place. So when I am still playing adult league hockey or if I'm reffing the college kids, yeah, I can be sarcastic because that's their love language. But I know that the minute I step out of the ice rink, it stays there. Whereas before, it just been like, why can't you take a joke? Girl, you're so sensitive. Now it's like, I can see how that is very offensive without the proper context. And she is not the proper context. And that's okay because I know I'm prone to black and white thinking. I can't black and white think like that because it's not fair to her. But without having the autism diagnosis, from my side of things, I'd have just been like, why are you so sensitive? You're from the 80s. You should be better than this. But now it's like, dang, talk about my mind blindness.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting because from the parent point of view, I totally get the way you communicate but it took me a while. I didn't begin that way because I didn't know what I didn't know.
Right.
But now I can read Joseph, my son,
Mm.
and I can go, okay, Joseph, I'm sorry. I don't really know what you mean. Like, there are times where he knows exactly what he's talking about, but I don't. Or I'll say something to him and I can just tell on his face that he has no idea what I'm talking about. Although I thought I did a good job. So I often say we speak two different languages. And I have to learn his language and he has to learn mine. And how instinctive. I think that is just remarkable that you knew how to converse with each other before you even knew why you were doing that, right? It's just like, oh, okay, I'm going to help you see this and you're going to help me see that. And I just think that is so powerful because it isn't about trying to change someone, right? It's about learning how to communicate and how do I get into your world and how do you get into my world?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And so now here we are, here you are, 20 years, beautiful work. And I know people, a lot of, moms that I coach have, troubles with their marriages because, they're not on the same page with their spouses. So, and then you get into the parenting side of it, right? So how do you use this beautiful relationship that you two have created and put it now towards parenting? And we'll come back to marriage in a second, but I want to know that.
Do you want to go first, or would you
Well,
like me to go first?
I think it's kind of a twofold in that, I get to kind of even more so than normal, right? Like in your normal thought of a mom and a dad, right? The mom's the nurturer and the dad's the one that like shows them how life is, right? It, it's that, but even more so, right? I'm definitely the nurturing part, and you can relate to them on a whole different level than
Yeah.
I would say most dads can relate to their kids.
It's it's been super powerful because, and it's not good cop, bad cop. It's, like with our daughter who's 12, she's AS1, very similar to me. And the two of them will have a conversation, and I can just tell my daughter's shutting down because of it. And I can kind of go like, look, I know you're feeling X, Y, and Z. And it talks her off of a ledge because she's like, how did you know? Like, and I'm like, me too, right? Like right. And so I
Yeah.
kind of intervene sometimes and give sort of for us bias perspective.
Mm.
So when she's getting dysregulated and shutting down because she doesn't understand the NT perspective, I
Mhm.
can sometimes be an interpreter and remind her like, mom's for you. Mom's brilliant. She just, her mind thinks differently than ours sometimes, and that doesn't have to be a conflict.
Mhm.
And so I feel like both with me being on the spectrum and with both kids on the spectrum, it allows me to have really in-depth conversations of saying like, I understand how dysregulating this is going to be. What do we need to do to prepare ourselves so that we can be our best version, not make everyone around us suffer because we're about to have a meltdown. I call it pre-regulation. Like, how can we pre-regulate? Like, if we know this is going to be triggering, like we know it, like it's a habit, right? Like, part of my autism is I see the world in patterns. Like, you were triggered by this 8 times. What's going to make the ninth time any different? So if I
Mhm.
know that situation is going to occur, I can go, okay, well, this probably will happen. What do we need? Well, if it's sunny, you need your sunglasses. If it's loud, like we got to our daughter, our kids are amazing. So our daughter got to perform the national anthem at a Pittsburgh Penguins game. And so
Yeah.
we know from history, when we go to loud places, if our son doesn't have his ear protection, he's going to lose his mind. So as soon as we knew the date and time, we were like, let's get the earmuffs because we know he can then be enjoyable. Now she's gotten to a place where the noise doesn't affect her, but my goodness, if she does not have sunglasses. So I've just
She
learned,
looks outside at a sunny window. She needs sunglasses.
right? And so I know that we just need to roll with sunglasses.
Hmm. So
And
we have like extra
we have so many
sunglasses in all the
sunglasses.
vehicles
Like
everywhere.
you think we were being punked because you open up a cupboard and you're like, sunglasses. Let's just stay in the picture. What happened? And so it's to me, it's really helpful because Charity has this very neurotypical view, as she would, of how 35 out of 36 people experience life. And then I've got this unique view as an adult making it through not being diagnosed and now
Mhm.
being diagnosed, that it allows me to offer insight to the kids of saying, like, this might just be a hill you don't die on
Yeah.
because majority of the world doesn't believe this. So yes, you want to lean into all the accommodations that you can, but you can't expect everyone to bend to you because you're autistic. So
Mhm.
how do we prepare you to be in a world that doesn't operate the way you operate? But also, how do we set you up for success? Because some of the things that make you not typical is actually more beneficial. So if you can harness them, you're going to still be ahead because of it
Right.
and trying to manage those emotions. So I feel like it's helped us immensely because she's got her ability to be that nurturing, amazing mother and explain the world as she sees it, because that's the way the majority see it. I'm able to translate and sort of have different conversations because I struggle with the things they struggle with, and I've
Mhm.
questioned and I've gotten migraines and I've yelled and I've cried because I just don't get it. And I can go like, I understand, but like, don't let your emotions go this far because they don't have to.
Mhm.
Mm.
You're not going to change these things, but these things over here you can. So let's put our attention to changing the things we can change, all the while we're working to control our own emotions. So
Mhm.
I feel like it's been a very good partnership that kind of going back to what we said a little earlier, having the diagnosis for me has made
Mhm.
things so much easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes sense, right? Because now you have you have an understanding. You get you and now you get them. And your relationship is also very unique. And so many of us can learn from both of you, which I love learning personally, and I also love sharing knowledge. So I I'm just curious what, like, through all this, the last 20 years and now with the children diagnosis, what is your best advice for couples
Hmm.
as families struggling in their relationships, right? And not just generally, but because I have a neurotypical son and then I have a neurodivergent son, and how they also communicate. So or live within their differences. So what's your advice for all of us out here?
I well, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think as far as being, being the neurotypical in a family, it's a lot of just being open and a lot of what we do is finding out, okay, this is why this is difficult. This is why you're struggling with this. And then just being compassionate and trying to help navigate through, okay, is this something you can learn to work with? And it's a knowledge piece that you're missing, or is this something that needs to, have an adaptation for? And so, helping the world fit them and helping them fit the world is kind of my main thing as far as parenting with the kids goes. I think with my guy, I don't know, I love him so much that it just, I don't know, it all just sort of clicks. I feel like, why wouldn't I want to try to do as much as I can to understand him as well as I can? And, when he's having a stressful day, I try to be there for him. And the same way that, when I'm having a stressful day, I may need to ask for him to be there, or I may need to say, "Dear, flowers are nice. but everyone else likes them. But to me, they smell bad. Please don't buy me any more flowers.
So great segue. I think for me, the advice I would give, and initially it's going to be a hard ask, but I know because you coach and we all coach, we know it's possible, is
Mm.
I think from the neurodivergent side is we need to be less black and white.
Mm,
Like we need to, whatever it takes mentally, emotionally, and psychologically, to admit there is an entire world that doesn't think the way we do. And that's not better or worse, right or wrong, it just is. Because for me, what that does is it sets a domino effect into motion of saying, well, if that reality is true for them and they believe as much about their reality as I believe about mine, then I can start to build empathy. Because if they get frustrated over that and I get frustrated over my special interest, like that's to me, that's one of the biggest misconceptions is that autistics don't have emotions. Well, we do. It's just not for what neurotypicals think we should care about. And
yeah.
so if I can understand that the way she is struggling is similar to the way I'm gonna get really autistic on you here, like NASCAR, huge special interest. They move the number forward, and I hate it. I absolutely hate it. And so if I can understand the way she is upset now at this situation is kind of like the way I feel about the numbers, then I can empathize. I can go, oh, that really sucks for you because I know how I feel about those numbers. Hate those
Mhm.
numbers. But that then allows me to go, well, if she's struggling like that, what do I need to do to
Yeah.
support her to be the person that she wants to be? And
Mhm,
so back to the whole learning to be less black and white, I've got my schedule of ideals. I've got my scenario of what I'd like to have happen.
mhm.
But if a scenario happens where a family member's sick or a kid gets suspended, which happened last week, it really is about understanding the expectations that we have as black and white thinkers need to be modified. I
Mm,
think honestly, everything from that, everything would stem from that is learn how to become less black and white.
mm,
Because I look at everything that I've done in terms of my executive function, and this is why I love the Mac versus PC. And this is where a lot of couples struggle, is the neurotypical views the world through this, they expect this, and when they get that, they're like, well, you changed. As soon as you got your autism diagnosis, you changed. And it's like, no, 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 you've always been autistic,
Mhm.
but there's different sensories now. There's
mm,
different things to trigger you. But that doesn't mean we can't do the behaviors that we did before. We just need to put a different program in. And so in the same way, we're recording this through a Mac. And if I need to write notes, I can do it on my Microsoft Office. I can have the Microsoft suite on my Macs, and I do, but it didn't come factory installed. And
mhm.
so I think the black and white thinking of it didn't come factory installed, so it doesn't, I'm not supposed to have it. No, just download the app. You can download empathy. You can download better lack of time blindness, all these things. And then being open to the change.
Mhm,
In business, there's a term that says what got us here won't get us there.
mhm.
And you can say that in life. What allowed me to get such an amazing woman isn't going to allow me to keep such an amazing woman. So what do I need to do to be a husband that's worthy of this fantastic lady? And if it means learning how to make eggs or having the patience to go through a HelloFresh recipe, then so be it. If it means having to learn how to pre-regulate more so I can be there for my children, then so be it. That's what needs to happen. And just because I'm autistic and those traits aren't factory installed doesn't mean I can't find the resources, whether it's books, coaching, whatever, to learn how to be that type of individual. And it's not necessarily changing, it's just becoming the version of you that you need to become to be the best father, the best husband, the best person.
Mm.
So I would say that's the advice. A, be open, but then become the person that you need to become for the situation that's demanding you to be that person.
Mm.
Yeah, what great advice. That I had so many ahas just in that little that little bit of advice as as I move forward with my own children. And, it really is about trying to step back and going, okay, I'm not going to take it personal. How can I shift? How can I change the way I view things? And yeah, I think it is really about learning about yourself and then applying that to your life. That's how we all grow in essence, but for some not as easy. I was wondering, your guide, I want to mention this before we go because I think this is going to be great. You have a guide called Argue Less, which I think is kind of what we're talking about, and Talk More, 3 steps to better communication in your relationship or marriage. Tell us about that. What are
I
the 3 steps?
Yeah, so I feel like communication is key, and
Yeah.
Mm.
we just don't do it well. I'm sorry, I don't know how else to put it. Like you look at the things you're taught in school, and communication, health and wellness, and financial literacy are like the 3 things that we're typically not taught. And then
Mhm.
you get to be an adult, and everyone's like, "Oh, you just need to communicate and manage your money and don't gain weight, and you'll be great." You're like, "I already did that. What do I do now?" And so,
Oh, that's so true.
right? And so,
Yeah.
as we would coach the couples, we would realize that quite often it was the communication that was breaking down,
Mm.
and people would take things very personally that were never meant to be taken personally. And that then put up walls, and which then demolished expectations, and it just unraveled from there. And so we would find that, people needed a way to have sort of a templated approach to start here. Like, hey, it would be nice to talk more and maybe argue a little bit less. And so, I mean, that's the heart of the guide, is to just get couples communicating, because if they can learn to communicate couple to couple, then ideally they can learn to communicate parent to child, because also quite often those skills aren't taught. And that was something that I had to work through. And I still struggle, I'm not going to lie. I talk to my kids like they're adults, but I also feel like as they get older, they see the respect level that's there. And so while it may have been a challenge early on,
Mhm.
I think now it's coming back around to where it's actually being a benefit to talk to them like little adults, because they feel the respect, they feel the agency, they feel that empowerment of, okay, well, dad's not just telling me what to do, dad's helping explain why these behaviors don't benefit me. And if they continue, how they will continue to not benefit me.
Yeah.
And having the ability to be patient and know that I'm still dad, so they're not going to listen, but at least I gave them their best shot.
Yeah. And I would say one of the benefits of Jeremy's neurodiversity is that he can take things that, you know, on my neurotypical side are just like, yeah, it's just, this cons like a conceptual thing. It's like ethereal feelings. It's hard to put things into words and into perspectives that you can convey to other people and have them understand. He's more able to look at it from, a point of, oh, well, this structure, this, here, let's just build it out into a structure. Let's make a table out of it, or let's make a bullet list out of it, or, see the patterns, name the patterns, and do those. That's something that he definitely has, that with me, it's more difficult to get across things that, like, I want to describe feelings and thoughts, and I'm I have a more difficult time doing it than he does. So I think he makes it more understandable for everyone, but I think also more understandable and relatable, especially for those on the autism spectrum, because things that are inherent for us, he has to more fully explain, for example, in writing, and it makes it easier for them to be able to understand what, comes by instinct for us.
Mhm. Yeah, I get that. I get that. So yeah, what a great, valuable interview this is, because you're giving so much insight to help us all shift. And really it's not that difficult, but it's difficult all at the same time.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just like, yeah, well, da 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 da. But then implementing it and having the patience to do everything that requires is what's so valuable, I think, that you two have for each other and your kids. I just think it's fantastic, and so much that we can learn from you both. Um, is there anything that you want to talk about or mention before we go?
Thank you for having us. No, it's always hard because you only have so much time, and when you present information, there's probably always questions.
Yeah.
And I know for me, I'm not great at hearing something once and being like, great, nailed it. So for me, if anyone who is listening is excited, confused, want to disagree, I'm okay with that too. But if anyone would like to get in contact, I want to give them the ability to get in touch. So we do have our website, which is our Neurofam, OURNEUROFAM.com. So if anyone wants to get in touch to learn more about some of the stuff we discussed today, absolutely, please do. Again, this is an open invitation. If something I said or something we said is groundbreaking and you want to learn more, get in touch. Or if you heard me say something and you're like, "I don't know about that." Well, cool. Get in touch as well. Let's have a conversation about it. But I want to extend to people who think like me, who hear something one time and are like, I'd like to hear more. Please get in touch. We'd love to talk more.
Oh, that's what a wonderful invitation that is, because I know sometimes I have more questions than I do answers, right? And so for anyone who's listening to this, you just got an invitation to reach out. We will also list the website and how to get in touch with both of you. I want to thank you again so much for being here, for taking the time to talk to us and give us some of your insights and to help us spread knowledge, hope, and inspiration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode of Mother's Guide Through Autism, please subscribe, because we want to reach as many people as we can to spread knowledge, hope, and inspiration. I'll see you in the next episode.